Few TV shows evoke the same warmth and nostalgia as The Andy Griffith Show. This series is set in the idyllic town of Mayberry and has been beloved by audiences for its charming characters, wholesome humor, and timeless lessons. Thelma Lou is the incredibly patient, sweet-as-pie girlfriend of Don Knotts' neurotic character Barney Fife. Let's take a journey back in time to celebrate the life and career of Betty Lynn, the talented actress behind Thelma Lou. Betty was born on August 29, 1926, in Kansas City, Missouri. Her mother was a singer and her father a civil engineer. Her parents separated when she was still a baby. Betty had minimal interaction with her father throughout her life. He was a cruel man, even making threats against his wife's life when she was pregnant with Betty. In 1930, her parents' divorce became final, but Betty would always remain afraid that her father would track them down and cause harm to them. After Betty's parents' marriage broke up, she and her mother moved in with her maternal grandparents, Josie and George Lynn. George was an engineer at the Missouri Pacific Railroad, and he became the central father figure in Betty's life. Betty's mother, Elizabeth, taught Betty to sing and dance as a toddler, and at 5 years old, Elizabeth enrolled Betty at the Kansas City Conservatory of Music. At 17, Betty came across an advertisement in the Kansas City Star seeking entertainers for the USO. She auditioned and was selected to participate. Even though her mother had strong reservations about Betty going overseas, Betty felt a strong urge to contribute to the war effort. And when Betty turned 18, she joined the USO Tour that was sent to the China-Burma-India Theater.
Seriously, the morale of this nation's Army, Navy, and Marine Corps is the problem of one lively lad multiplied by several million. You know, during the war, our boys in uniform were in every country in the world and on every ocean. They were in the hardest places to get to and in the biggest cities. Keeping up their spirit was a tremendous job, which for more than 5 years, in large part, rested in the hands of a volunteer group, the USO.
In a 2016 interview, Betty said she understood the gravity of her situation while riding in a Jeep in the dark on the road to Mandalay. A Marine captain handed her a pistol and said, "You may need this." With a notebook of over 700 tunes in hand, Betty visited hospitals and brought joy to patients by singing their requested songs. She remembers soldiers who would be there one day and then would be gone the next. They had spent their last day with a teenager from Missouri who talked to them about their hometowns and sang them a final request. These memories stuck with Betty for the rest of her life. After her USO tour, Betty was cast in the Broadway musical Park Avenue. During this musical's short run, Betty was spotted by 20th Century Fox executive Darryl Zanuck. Betty was signed to a 7-year contract with 20th Century Fox and made her film debut in the 1948 comedy Sitting Pretty, where she co-starred with Robert Young, Maureen O'Hara, and Clifton Webb. That same year, Betty co-starred with Bette Davis and Robert Montgomery in the comedy film June Bride. And the movie roles kept coming. She played Loretta Young's daughter in the 1949 comedy Mother is a Freshman, and that same year, she played Fred McMurray's daughter in Father was a Fullback.
Lowest classification a girl could fall to, Father. I'm chintzy.
Chintzy? Is that bad?
Bad. Oh, Father, it's the end.
She appeared again with Bette Davis in the 1951 drama Payment on Demand. With the money she earned from her films, Betty purchased a house in West Los Angeles, large enough to accommodate her, her mother, and her grandparents. Betty had become the family's breadwinner. And Bette Davis, known for being a bit cantankerous at times, befriended the young Betty Lynn when they first worked together on June Bride. And during their friendship, Betty Davis expressed concern that Betty Lynn's family was taking advantage of her. She advised Betty Lynn that if she wanted to become a star, she needed to prioritize her own needs over everyone else's. Years later, Betty Lynn said that Betty Davis was right. Betty Lynn acknowledged that she may have missed her chance to become a major star by not putting herself first. Still, she never regretted prioritizing her family. After what she had been through with her father, she considered herself lucky to have such a close bond with her mother and grandparents. In 1952, she made her television debut, replacing Pat Kirkland as the lead on the CBS afternoon series, The Egg and I. And despite having good reviews, CBS struggled to find sponsorship and the series was canceled.
Someplace, let's see. Here it is. The best time for growing things above the ground is during the new and first quarter of the moon. For growing things below the ground during the full moon.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, but wait now. Here's what I want to show you. Now, it goes on to say that planting by the time of the moon is superstition only and has never been proven of value by scientific methods.
Betty played the role of June Wallace, the sister-in-law of Ray Bolger's character in the 1953 ABC sitcom Where's Raymond, which later was renamed The Ray Bolger Show. Betty left after the first season.
Show. Where's Raymond? Starring Ray Bolger as Raymond Wallace, with Alan Jocelyn as Jonathan.
In 1958, she was cast as Viola Slaughter in the television western Texas John Slaughter, which aired on ABC's Magical World of Disney. During a hiatus from Texas John Slaughter, Betty tested for the recurring role of Thelma Lou on The Andy Griffith Show, and Betty was cast as a sweet-natured sweetheart of Mayberry's deputy sheriff, Barney Fife. Betty appeared in 26 episodes over 5 years, but in 1965, when Don Knotts decided to leave the show, there wasn't much more they could do with Betty's character. Barney and Thelma Lou parted ways, and Thelma Lou was married off to someone else. And this decision greatly distressed Betty, as she did not want to imagine her character with anyone other than Barney. In a 2018 article, Betty said, "I didn't want to leave Thelma Lou. I really loved her. She was sweet and kind and so fun to play, and I loved working with Don Knotts. He was so wonderful." Betty reprised her role in the 1986 television movie Return to Mayberry. A now divorced Thelma Lou rekindles her relationship with Barney Fife, and the two finally tied the knot. Thelma Lou finally got her happily ever after. Betty struggled to find consistent work after her stint on The Andy Griffith Show. She had recurring roles on the CBS sitcom Family Affair and the popular sitcom My Three Sons. She made guest appearances on The Farmer's Daughter, Little House on the Prairie, Barnaby Jones, and the ABC drama The Smith Family, which once again brought her together with her Andy Griffith co-star Ron Howard. In 1986, Betty reunited once again with Andy Griffith on the television series Matlock, where she took a recurring role as Andy's secretary, Sarah. Unfortunately, Betty's time on Matlock was short-lived, ultimately creating a rift between her and Andy. Betty was not satisfied with the size of her role. She had hoped that her character, Sarah, would become a main character, and she told Andy she wanted more screen time. But that wasn't the direction that Andy or the producers had in mind for her character, and they decided to remove her from the show. Her feelings were hurt, and she and Andy didn't speak again for 20 years. And then one day, out of the blue, Andy called her, and the two reconciled and remained friends until Andy's death in 2012. Betty's mother passed away in 1984, leaving Betty alone in their home. Betty was a trusting person, and unfortunately she fell prey to shady repairmen and other people who took advantage of her kind nature. After her house was broken into for the second time, Betty became too scared to continue living there, and as a result, she decided to leave her home and move into a hotel in Los Angeles. In 2006, Betty visited Mount Airy, North Carolina for the annual Mayberry Days and fell in love with the little town. Mount Airy is the birthplace of Andy Griffith and is said to have inspired the fictional town of Mayberry. Betty loved the scenery and the warm, friendly people who would stop and chat with her. She packed her belongings in California, moved to North Carolina, and found her new home. Betty would sign autographs on the third Friday of every month at the Andy Griffith Museum in Mount Airy, and she always drew a crowd. Betty said people get so emotional when they come here, and they have an emotional reaction to the show. When they cry, so do I. And Andy Griffith told her he could not believe she had ended up in his hometown. She said it was the best thing she had ever done. She said, "I am surrounded by so much love now." Betty passed away on August 16, 2021, in Mount Airy, North Carolina, her adopted hometown. She was 95 years old. Betty is buried at Holy Cross Cemetery in Culver City, California, near her beloved mother, Elizabeth. If you have a favorite Thelma Lou and Barney Fife scene, please leave it below in the comments. And if you've enjoyed this video, please give it a like. And if you like this sort of content, please subscribe. Thank you so much for watching.